Hello,
This meeting is being recorded.
hello, wonderful. This is Sarah. I have worked with a lot of coaches and a lot of healers, and they have this word that they're always talking to me about that sends triggers down my spine, and it's so frustrating. And every time they tell me this, and they all say the same thing. Every time they say this, they talk about rest. And they're like, Sarah, you work all the time. I'm like, love it. And I go, oh, you need to rest. You need to rest. And I've always really had an issue with rest because it felt like someone was telling in the word rest. I don't have an issue resting. I heart naps. But when people would tell me to rest, it felt like they were blocking me somehow, or they were blocking me towards my goals or blocking me towards my future. And so I knew I needed to rest, but I couldn't really figure out how to make myself want to. And then I started thinking about the word nourish. And so if someone says, I need you to, I think it'd be a good idea if you took some time to nourish your nervous system. I was like, totally fine with that. Awesome. I can do that. That sounds great. If somebody said rest, what I heard was stop while the world keeps spinning. But nourish your nervous system, I was like, oh, that sounds lovely. That sounds like becoming my best self. That sounds like growth. That sounds wonderful. And our guest today is actually writing a book called Nourish. And so when she told me the title of her book, I was like, oh, girl, I've got a story for you on that. And so Nourish is actually one of my favorite words. So, Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
So, what does Nourish mean to you?
So, there are a lot of meanings to nourish, and I've seen people do exactly what you've talked about, right? When you say slow down, rest, people look at you like, how in the world am I going to do that? Right? There's no way. Everything will fall apart. There's too much going on. I'll get left behind, right? The sense of, and I'm even talking faster, right? Because we feel this sense of like, I'm a doer. What are you talking about?
Well, and
And
after a toxic relationship, it can be hypervigilance,
it
right? I mean,
totally can. It's so protective and defensive. And it's like, I'm just going to keep going. I've got to keep doing. I can't stop moving. Something might catch me, right? Like, no, I can't. And so it really is this place of, okay, well, when I thought about what is it that I've been working with my clients for over 25 years, as far as in the holistic healthcare world and in the coaching advocate world, and it was like, well, I want people to start cherishing themselves, to nourish themselves. And that's actually what nourish means. One of the Latin roots is cherish. And if we can come from a place instead of, well, I have to, I should, I must, right? I have this list of obligations and expectations that I am supposed to fulfill. I have to do these things. And we change the channel to a place of nourish. Nourish means we're replenishing and we're recharging our batteries. Nourish means that we listen to our body, we listen to the inner voice that sometimes I know people find critical and want to tell it to shut up. But in reality, that inner voice is a protective voice to keep you healthy and safe. And so nourishing is really a collaboration between the body, mind and body, and making sure that we have that energy to go forward and do the things that feel meaningful, that bring us joy, right? And coming from a place of enoughness, that we have enough time, that we have enough energy. And I created a actual acronym as a cognitive therapist, part of my work. And I know you have a great memory, and I like to support people in their memory at times, especially speakers and authors. And when we have acronyms, it's easier to remember. So I created this 7-faceted framework with Nourish that, right? So it has a lot of meaning to me in multiple ways. But the biggest thing is that we constantly are checking in and we are replenishing, we're rejuvenating. So we're coming from a place, like I said, of enoughness, of fullness, of this expansive place instead of running on the hamster wheel.
And there's that concept of what got you here won't get you there. Right? Have you heard that? And so if someone has left a toxic situation or a really traumatic situation or just a really, really stressful time, your body probably needed to send you that extra energy and send you that extra power in fight and flight or whatever it was to get you through that season. And so, because I do want you talk about the voice in the head and things, and I want to say every time you have adrenaline, I don't want people to feel like their body's working against them. That is your body trying to work for you. But we're just not meant to live like that. You know, if you need to get your child to the hospital and they're sick, you go fast,
You
right?
go fast. And that's
Yes.
part of nourishing. It's listening and being present too,
Mhm.
right? It's like what is needed to take care of yourself with love and the people that you care about, right? And you're right. In some situations, we do need to tap into the good stress, right? Like we've talked about before, I think many times as guides and coaches, right? There's the good, bad, and the ugly sides of stress, right? But we need that adrenaline, we need that cortisol, we need that stress response, and we need to be able to rise up at times.
Mhm.
That's important.
But we don't want to get stuck. It's like you're taking your kid to the hospital, awesome. But then if like the gas pedal, like a mechanism messed up and it just stayed glued to the floor, and then it's like, whoa, it's just scary, right? What got you here won't always get you there. Won't get you to
Right.
that next level.
And that's this is that relationship where you keep checking in and keep seeing and finding and listening to what your body and your mind really need in the moment, right? And there are going to be these dips and valleys, and sometimes we're just charging in, whether that's to achieve something or to protect someone. But we then, just like with the car, and we hear it all the time, you can't drive a car with no gas in it, right? The indicator light comes on. And oftentimes I have found, especially women, some men, right, more caretaking men, they will deplete themselves in a place of mending, tending, and befriending others, right? And so we often talk about the fight, flight, nervous system responses, but we don't always talk about the fun or the mend, tend, and befriend, which I have clients all the time during their sessions. They will want to talk about their daughter, their son, their partner, right?
Okay,
Their
so my
colleagues
next
at work.
so my next book is about problem solving. I know your book's Nourish, so my next book is about problem solving and decision making. And I say 2 questions will change everything in your life. What problem are you trying to solve? Is it your problem to solve?
Exactly. And it is a perfect way for people. It's acceptable and it's
It's
extremely common for people to, when they get uncomfortable, when it's getting too deep, when it's getting scary or vulnerable to talk about themselves or to even help themselves, they then turn to this place of, I'm going to mend, tend, befriend, and nourish someone else. I'm going to put them in the spotlight and not myself.
Mm.
Even though I'm exhausted. It's a habit,
Mm.
right? And I love those questions of yours in the book because there is a sense of one of the most common unhelpful thought patterns is taking an over responsibility for situations that come our way. And that can be applauded, right? Of course, companies
Especially,
might like that.
yeah, when it's to someone else's advantage, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, well, who's applauding this? It's probably someone benefiting from your exhaustion,
right? And so there are these two sides. We can look at someone who takes this over sense of responsibility. They maybe have patterns of being an achiever or a perfectionist, and the outside world might really like that. But we end up in that overdrive place for too long. We keep giving from an empty cup, and it's not sustainable. And I have seen that so many times with parents, with professionals, with teachers, with nurses, with doctors, you name the profession, right? People giving, 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 achieving, achieving, achieving. And this is that antidote to either that overdrive, overwhelm, burnout that happens when we just don't pause, right, and recharge, or the fog and the shutdown that can happen, because sometimes the nervous system goes, I'm out. You aren't taking care of me. And I have completely shut down. I've given all I can, right? And the whole body shuts down. And so we know people who've experienced both. We've experienced both over time here, especially of late. There's just been so much stimulation and chatter. There's a lot going on. And so what we can keep coming back to is that place of, well, am I nourishing myself so that way I can then give to others, that way I can fulfill my purpose, I can do my thing, I can take care of my partner, I can share this life with the people I care about, but I'm coming from a grounded, sustainable, intentional space.
So one of the things that has helped me is I think a little bit about like a squirrel storing up for winter, right? I'm not a rester. I don't like it. I just don't. Right. I mean, I just don't. And though I do take a lot of naps and I go to bed early. So I'm really just not tired a lot of times. Yeah, I take naps and I go to bed early. So that's my but I don't play as often as some other personalities. You know, the idea like I'm gonna rest by just sitting and looking at the water for 2 hours. That I don't do as much of that, but I get great sleep. Anyway, point being, kind of like a squirrel storing up for winter. That was harder to say than I thought. I don't want to get to a place that I've been driving the car so empty and then something really important comes up and I'm already at the end of my rope. That's a huge motivator for me. Like I've lived long enough to know I don't get to choose when life is going to throw something important at me. I just get to choose if I'm like that squirrel and I've got enough energy in the bank, enough health in the bank, enough nutrients and nourishment in the bank to survive that and thrive as my best self through that challenge.
And you're right. You never, excuse me, you never know when an opportunity or something really energy requiring will pop up in your life. And you want to be ready. And you hit on a topic that I love to talk about. I call it our brain bank, right? Like we have brain dollars. And are you making sure that you have enough nourishing deposits as well as your purposeful withdrawals and your investments? Because if you are running in debt or you're energy bankrupt, it makes it really challenging. So building a reserve, not only for your body, but also having a cognitive reserve for your mind really will allow people to be ready, right? It also increases, I call it the zone of resilience, right? Then if we want to stay in that zone of resilience, that's that place where we can go, oh, I've got this. I can figure this out. I am flexible. I can flow with it. I see 4 different ways we could go about this, right? And we can connect and engage and be curious. But when we're getting really low on our reserves and stressful things or uncertainty is thrown our way, we get pulled out of that zone of resilience. And then it's like, whew, I turn more black and white, right? Some of those thought patterns that we do to protect and defend ourselves come into play. And that's when we start making more assumptions, or we start getting caught up in, well, the future. And we think we've got a crystal ball and we're imagining what the future is going to look like. And it pulls us out of that zone of resilience and being more present. So, as you said, right, having that conscious intention to store away and keep that reserve for yourself allows you to then rise up to the challenge, to be the champion of that opportunity, or to get away from a dangerous situation.
Mhm. Well, and I think a lot about it as a mother. And won't forget, I was driving home from Florida one time, and I had left at like 4 in the morning, hoping the kids would sleep in the car so they wouldn't be right, somewhat at least sleep in the car for part of the 8-hour trip. And we ran into some traffic, and then the kids were fighting. They were grumpy because I woke them before, and then they were sleeping. And every parent knows like what I'm saying, yeah, in this situation. And we had kind of eaten some snacks because there was a place along the way that we were going to stop. That was like the kids' favorite place to eat. I thought, oh, this is going to be just a good memory. It's not something close to our house, kind of something in the middle of the way. And I had been trying to eat healthy recently at that time. I had a lot of white fish in Florida and healthy food, trying to eat healthy. By the time I got to that restaurant, it was a Greek restaurant. I ordered all the bread. I ordered all the pasta. Like I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't want to. I wasn't gonna yell at my kids and stuff, but it was just such a moment that I remember thinking like, "Rah!" Like I'm tired. It's been since 4. I've been in the car for 7 hours. You guys are fighting. I'm tired of this. I know I want to go home too. I wanted this. I wanted that. I'm pretty sure we left your iPad. And we did. We left my daughter's iPad there. I mean, just all these different things. But that type of situation that every parent understands, right? And that was a one-off for me, and it was I solved it with all the carbs. I did not solve it with all the carbs, but I tried to solve it with all the carbs. But if that is the only experience our kids are having of us, because we're never nourished with rest, we're never nourished with enough planning that it's, okay, things are somewhat organized. So always things are going to pop up, always, but it's not, when one thing pops up, it doesn't go into a crisis because you have that nourishment, you have that rest, you have that brain bank, you have that build up, so you don't reach the end of your rope.
Exactly. And what is really important, what I've noticed people have, it gives them pause, right? They hesitate, is when I say, what are your nourishing deposits? Right? I already know a couple of yours. You occasionally nap and you make sure that you go to bed early and you get a good night's sleep. 2 extremely important deposits, but everybody's different. For me, this is going to sound sort of funny. It was sort of the anti-New Year's idea. I actually decided I was going to stop and pause everything and put all the balls of obligations and expectations down. And then I was going to consciously choose how I picked them back up. So that means I paused it all. The really good diet that I have created, going to dance class, running, with the different things that I do, the get up early. I was just like, I'm going to just clear the slate. And let's see what 2022 is really all about here, right? And it was interesting. Of course, the family, I have a daughter, I have a rescue dog, right? Like I picked that ball up immediately, but I picked it up a little differently, right? I mean, so it was down for 20 seconds, right? But I did just say, how can I do this in a more nourishing way for myself? And that may look different. Right? That's not always the same.
Well, I heard someone, I think it was Marie Forleo, and she said something recently about time management. And she said, ask yourself the question, what are you doing because other people expect you to?
Yes, exactly.
And when I heard that, there was something instantly, and honestly, it was like an unhealthy parenting technique that I felt pressure from other mothers who I thought were really doing some unhealthy things. But then I felt bad, like, oh, you're spoiling it wasn't this, but it was like, oh, well, you're spoiling your kids with brand new clothes. Again, not this example, but you're spoiling your kid with brand new clothes. I feel expected. I feel obligated. I'm a bad mother if I'm not spoiling my kid with brand new clothes. It was something like that.
Right.
And
That external calibration and pressure and influence that really, it really does encroach, right? It just starts to give us this push and nudge a certain way.
well, it builds, in that example, then it can turn into a financial issue. It can have repercussions for your child who becomes really high maintenance and keeps needing more and more and more. And then she gets into a future relationship and, her and her husband are bankrupt because she's so high maintenance because I spoiled her. It is some really long-term consequences of not living in your truth or doing what's best, feeling obligated, those types of situations.
It is. And we are, we're role models for our children, but we also know that energy and behavior, it's contagious, right? For example, if I'm just a simple example, if I am, I live in Boulder, Colorado, there's a move to be very athletic in this town. And it's a gorgeous town. But I've have in my history, feels like a different lifetime, run a marathon. But it was, now I enjoy walks with my dog every morning, right? That's a way that I nourish myself. And that's not necessarily the typical way to really push the exercise realm. And there are other things that I do, but walking is one of the most valuable, impactful things you can do for your body and your brain, your joints, right? It's a great thing to do. I also get to incorporate sort of a mindful meditation movement to that walk. I did it today. It's 5 degrees outside, but I make sure I go. And
I am not walking in 5-degree weather. It is not nearly that cold here. And so one of my goals, like ungoals or whatever, is getting out in sunshine. Like, working from home. I don't have a dog. I have no reason to go outside, like, ever. When I was sick, I told you I've been sick recently. No problem. I'm just at home. It's fine. And so, but it's like, even like 35 degrees. I'm like, because one of my goals was to go out, before 10 a.m. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that research that getting sunlight before 10 a.m. can have turn off your depression sensors and that type of thing. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I did some, but I can't believe you're going out 5 degrees. No, I'm really good at following through on what I say I'm going to, but I'm not going out in 5 degrees. I know that.
I do. That is one of I'm very clear that, and I did put this ball down for a little bit, for a few days, and I realized, nope, I got to pick this ball back up. It really does just feel like a very nourishing deposit for me to get out and moving in the sunshine, or even last week it was dumping snow, but for me to move in the earlier part of the day, that's one of my nourishing deposits. And so unless we did have the complete black ice type of thing, I did not go that day because I've slipped on ice before. So no, thank you. But otherwise, I find my way to get outside. Right. And that's one of those things. I was like, oh, I stopped that for a couple days when it was really cold. I was like, I miss it. I'm going to put it back in. And, I didn't do dance class for a couple of months. And then yesterday I picked that ball back up and I'm like, no, I really do love dance class. I'm gonna, and I can do it virtually, which is nice. So I did. And it was negative something degrees yesterday. I don't remember. Not Minnesota negative, but it was cold. And so, it's looking at what are those nourishing deposits. So when we're in the car driving back from Florida and the kids are just, kids and adults have such a hard time sometimes during transitions, right? And changing things up just sends their whole system in a tailspin. And so if we can think about that right? You're always putting in a super nourishing deposit by getting a good night's sleep. So that way, if you have a child who's up sick one night, you have it in the bank. So you may end up, I mean, I've done this, right? Where it was like, oh, my child just ended up sick all night long. And I have a presentation, a
Right.
workshop I'm giving, right? But because I had the reserves, I was still able to do it. It doesn't mean I wasn't tired. It just means that I had that, I could stay in the zone of resilience because I went for my walk. I eat a good breakfast, right? I kind of do that. I hope it's okay to say this, but sometimes I do all those things in the morning just in case the day goes like sideways or hell in a handbasket type of day, right? Like it's like at least I've done those things for me. So I am a little more nourished and able to handle what comes our way. And every parent or entrepreneur or business person or healthcare worker, anybody who's listening has had that time when it's like, yeah, I had plans, but those totally just went upside down.
My daughter broke her arm last spring, and that was what came to mind. Talk about being up with sick, and she was hurting, so I was sleeping at the foot of her bed in case, that type of thing. Man alive. And when I took away that nourishment of, because I'm go, 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 but it's a flow for me because I'm sleeping. I mean, 8 hours every night, and sometimes there's a nap in there. Like I get great sleep, so I really do have that energy to go, go, go in the process of the day. And when that nourishment was gone, sleeping at the foot of her bed, being worried, being afraid, dealing with doctors, trying to make appointments, it was scary, right? And seeing your child in pain, it was shocking, the change, when you take away, and thank goodness the bank was built up. But when those go away, you really see the dark side, and what life could be if you weren't nourishing yourself.
Yes. And I have heard even the other day, I was at a physical therapy appointment, and she said, I have the hardest time. And oftentimes healthcare providers and caretakers and parents will feel this way. I know what I'm supposed to do. Like there's this whole talk of self-care, self-care, self-care. It is important. And just like anything, when it gets thrown at you, right? Like you said, rest. You need to rest, Sarah. And it's like, okay, everybody, you need to do your self-care. One, it can feel like one more thing on a very full plate, right? Like when the heck am I going to fit that in, right? And self-care isn't just bubble baths and candles and a funny movie, right? That's not all it is. It can include those things. But when we're coming from a mindset of I am nourishing myself, it's a little different, right? And she said, I sometimes actually feel guilt and shame because I know I am supposed to be taking care of myself in a better way. I know that there's a self-care element there. And I'm intellectually smart enough to understand to do this, but I can't always make it happen. Like there's this gap. And she said, and then I really do. I sit at home and I feel shame and guilt that I can't do this. Right. And there she is helping people every day as a physical therapist. Right. So she is giving from that cup. But then she gets home and she's so tired, and she has a 2-year-old, right? That she's like, I don't even have the energy to do that. Like, I'm lucky that I make a good dinner, if that even happens. Right. And that's the reality. There is no judgment around finding your way to nourish yourself. It can be the tiniest things, the tiniest acts can be nourishing, right? And everyone is different. And really, we want to find things that are sustainable and fit for you.
We've talked about sleep, we've talked about exercise. What are some other ways that you've seen effective nourishment take place?
So one of the most nourishing things, and I'll share just the N in the Nourish acronym, And that is saying no. N stands for no, because I truly believe that it is important for us to say no to the things that we can, that do not feel aligned, that are taking up the space and the energy and the time that are sacred for ourselves. So I always say that saying no respectfully and kind and honestly, right? That is the way to create more space for you to say yes to nourishing yourself, to the meaning, to the joy, to the play, right? To making a healthy meal for yourself, to hydrating more, right? Actually, this breathe is an acronym as well. I really love acronyms. And I really talk about the B is budgeting your time and energy. R is replenishing and recharging the batteries and rest. Getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep is so important, and every body is different. Know that we eat nourishing foods, and we don't go more than 4 hours without checking in on our body to see if it needs more actual food and fuel, right? That we do less multitasking. The A is attend to one thing at a time, because multitasking, in reality, only 2% of the population can multitask well with cognitive tasks. That was a bummer to hear, I have to say, because I thought I was one of the 2%. Guess not.
Probably everyone hearing that thinks they're one of the 2%. I mean, because there's a survey about drivers, and like 80% of people think they're an above average driver, and it's like, probably not, you know?
Right, exactly, right? That totally popped to my bubble when I read that. I remember reading that research going, oh, and it said the people who think they're great at multitasking with cognitive tasks are usually not as good. Okay, right? So attending when we can to one thing at a time. Certainly, especially parents, we're task switchers, right?
Mhm.
But juggling a lot of cognitive tasks puts a lot of stress on the brain, and it will activate the nervous system, making it think that it needs to go into a fight and flight situation when that's not really necessary at that time.
Mhm.
And then I talk about treating ourselves with love and respect, just like we treat everyone else. I actually, yeah, I think that it's so important that we cultivate the compassion that we have for other people, for ourselves. And so oftentimes I went to work with food poisoning one time.
Mm.
So I am running between clients to get sick and then come back. And I'm not sure why I thought that would be a good idea. And after seeing 5 clients, and hitting lunch hour, I thought, would I ever tell my sister, my best friend, or actually a stranger to push themselves in that way? I was like, no, go tell the schedulers you need to leave and cancel the rest of the day. Everyone will live. And it's not okay that you're doing this to your body. It wasn't compassionate, kind, or respectful. Hydrating and exercise, whatever that looks like for you, right? Spending time with people you love. I think deep connection is so important. Laughter is important for some people. If that is, I've had a really rough day and I need to YouTube a funny cat video, fantastic. If that's a funny show that you watch and you're a fan of Ted Lasso and you and your partner like to grab a glass of hot cocoa or wine or water and watch that one episode of that, right? It's looking at what really feels like it is supporting you in being present and activating the highest level of well-being mentally and physically.
Melissa, this has been lovely. Thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
So my website, melissawolak.com. You can go there. There's even a little boundary setting guide there for people if you want to work on saying no. I am also very active on Instagram. Melissa H. Wolak is that handle. And you can find me with through my name on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. But I'd say my website and Instagram are the best places to go.
So if you had 1 minute that you got to broadcast a message to the world, what would you want everyone to know?
I would say there really is power in pausing and breath and taking 3 breaths between each task and activity to get yourself grounded and reset so that you can listen to what your body needs in any moment will help you be more present and focused and fulfilled throughout the day.
Awesome. So everyone's homework is to take 3 breaths and excuse me, and thank you for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof.